But I do think it's a good target. I'm just interested in the sensitivities around that target. What if it's 42% of the water? How much? What is that? How does that affect the cash flow? If it's 35%, but we now have. If it's not 40, we're out. So I guess we don't need sensitivities on that.
No. Can you see that? That's probably where the adding this point is that I've clearly done sensitivities around uptake through the balance of the uptake curve, and those sensitivities, for example, range on a base case of 10 years post-build to full uptake, which I don't think is absolutely that aggressive. There's a upside up case which is 8 years, and there's a downside case that says it takes 24 years. So we've done the sensitivities, but the point is that the hard target is the front end target, and I'll be clear about this too. That is by far and away the hardest sale because there's no infrastructure built, there's no pipe, there's no water running. Whereas when there are pipes, when there's a reservoir, and when there's water running, it's an easy sale.
Councillor Barker.
I said there's no numbers in the business case to support the 40 million cubic metres. Would you have a set of numbers that says this is what means to break even? And if so, could they be made available?
We will be providing to Deloitte's the full financial modelling and all that kind of information, and so that those kind of analyses can be done by them to advise you.
But do they not get supplied to the councillors who are the decision makers?
It's a question you need to ask of your own advisors. I imagine we will be. Much of this information is quite commercially sensitive, so it's being provided to your advisors so that they can form a view on whether or not our view and the view of other investors is reasonable.
Well, I would have taken, Andy, that you were our advisor. You are the chair of HBRIC. You're advising the board on this on behalf of us. So I would have taken you in the ambit of advisors. So as one of our advisors to this council, will you supply the information to us?
Perhaps I could answer that, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, Dr. Pearce. The issue around the commercial sensitivity of some of the figures, as Mr. Newman has pointed out, mean that in the first instance that those figures will be supplied to Deloitte so that they have the full package, and it's quite possible that when Deloitte present to you the findings of the independent peer review, that some of that information will have to be given to you in public excluded and may not be able to be made public until after financial close, if at all.
Well, thank you for answering on behalf of Dr. Pearce. The point I want to make, though, is that if these figures are available and they're not being made available to me as a councillor because they're commercially sensitive, I accept that. But I would have thought that would have been clear in the business case. When I read this as a business case, there are lots of numbers, lots of issues in here for which there are no numbers, and it makes me feel nervous. No numbers. Now, if you are not going to provide the numbers because they're commercially sensitive, I would have liked you to have said so, because you've left me with the impression that you're not providing them. So I just want to know, are we going to get them? Yes. And if so, in what form?
Which has been answered.
And I think the answer is the answer that your Chief Executive has given you, that we will provide all of that information to your professional advisors. If you have chosen a path as a council to undertake an independent assessment of what we're proposing, it seems to me that you should follow the path that you have chosen, which is to do that. And should there be a debate about this, and if there is any difference of view between Deloitte's and HBRIC, then about any of these matters that are not suitable to be discussed in the public domain, then of course we will be happy to take part in that. But many of these matters are not suitable to be in the public domain.
Okay, I think we've thrashed out the 40 million cubes.
I'm not going to make a decision on this without summary cash flows, pro forma balance sheets, the whole works.
And no one's asking you to, Councillor Graham, are they?
Well, this is a business plan. Actually, this is a business, what do you call it? Case. It's not a bad one. I enjoyed reading it, but it's not a business plan. When are we going to get the business plan?
It's a time frame for Deloitte's report.
Deloitte's will be reporting back to the Corporate and Strategic Committee meeting on the 16th of April, so 3 weeks from today. You will have all the information that's been made available to them, both in open and quite probably some in public excluded. So you will have the full picture then. So the idea of as I explained at the outset, the process for today is for you to receive this information that HBRIC have presented to you, and for that to be forwarded onto Deloitte for them to undertake the work that we've commissioned them to do.
Independently. Councillor Balfour.
Mr. Chairman, I came prepared with 41 questions, many of which would have follow-up, and it's clear that that is not going to be indulged by the chairman in this meeting.
Is today the day, is my question to you. Is today the day for that?
Well, I guess we were led to believe that we would be getting a business case, not from Deloitte. We would be getting a business case from HBRIC. I think what you're hearing is a number of us feel that there are significant omissions of information or superficial information that leave this well short of what a business case is, certainly as I understand a business case. This is a lot of rhetorical restatement of the case for proceeding with this project. It is not providing the kinds of detailed data that I, as a councillor, would want to have an opportunity to see. So I don't think this is a business case. And I don't look to Deloitte to provide a business case. I look to Deloitte to provide an analysis of a business case.
So, Chairman, I think we have followed the process that you as a council determined should be followed. As I've said, we are providing your advisors, whose job it is to scrutinise our proposition, including the financial models and all of the cash flows and all of those kinds of things. We are providing those to them for them to report back to you. That is our understanding of what this process was supposed to be, and I believe we have delivered on our understanding of that. The second thing I would say is that I would reinforce that a number of the matters on which councillors wish to delve into fine detail are not appropriate, in my opinion, to be dealt with in a public forum. It's you as council that have chosen to have this discussion today in public forum, and by the very fact that it is in public, you have limited what it is that we can put in front of you. I'm more than happy to engage in whatever other processes, and my fellow directors are as well, whatever other processes you wish subsequent to receiving your advice from Deloitte to discuss the fine detail. But there will be some considerations which need to be dealt with outside of a public forum.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, could I add a third point to that? At the time that, or immediately following the appointment of Deloitte to undertake the independent peer review, their first task was to set out a complete list from their perspective of what a business case should contain. That was forwarded by us to HBRIC, and they have followed that, I believe, quite clearly. But obviously Deloitte will need to analyse the detail of it. So in terms of it being a complete or otherwise business case, I think Deloitte will also provide an independent view on that as well.
Councillor Barker.
I want to be helpful here. I think there's a misapprehension of what was intended here for today. I think the impression that obviously the HBRIC board have is that they were presenting, if I can characterise it this way, the business case in its general form, with a lot of the details which are commercially challenging and sensitive, to be supplied in the first instance to Deloitte, and then at some subsequent date to the council for them to see with their advisors. That's the impression you have. That's not the impression I had. I had sent to me some notes saying this is a business case, and I'm aware that Deloitte's are doing some work on our behalf. But as I understand the process, Deloitte's are not the decision makers. The decision makers for the $80 million are around this table. And if I'm going to be a decision maker, I want to know everything there is to know.
And you will, Councillor Barker.
Just go finish.
Well, have you got any questions or points of clarification?
Just trying to get ourselves to we've got several people.
We're already there.
No, we haven't. I want to say to you, I've turned up, as I sense others have turned up here, with a different impression of what this was today. And the point I want to make is we've got to learn a lesson from how did we get to this point that I turn up to a meeting with quite a different impression from what Dr. Pearce has of his intentions here. This is where the collision is.
Well, it's certainly unfortunate, Chairman, that the respective parties here seem to have arrived at this meeting with a different view of what this was going to be about today. I think I said at the outset, and I think your Chief Executive said at the outset, that we are not expecting a decision. We are not seeking a decision from you today other than to refer this to your advisors.
Councillor Hewitt.
Dr. Pearce, thank you for your presentation this morning, and I think we're partway into a very long journey. I took it as my understanding that we were accepting a recommendation to be coming from HBRIC to the Council, and now our due diligence commences or is on its way. So I have a question for you, and all the way along during this project I've had it flagged $80 million, and now I'm reading, not in the business case but in the document you spoke to just before, 18.1, that it's up to $80 million with great potential for ratepayers, community people within Central Hawke's Bay, farmers and non-farmers who are preferred investors, to be investing. I think that's really commendable that locals can have a slice of this pie as well, should they so desire. But I'm wondering how it came to be that our $80 million is sliding back, and it appears we may be taking the back seat in terms of how many investors are coming forward. I would have thought if this was such a win-win proposal that we would be grabbing all we could.
That's a refreshing perspective. So let me begin by saying if you read the Council's long-term plan, which is now a couple of years old, you would see that the long-term plan says up to $80 million. So the up to $80 million is not new. It has always been an objective of HBRIC, and I think of the councils, to attract local investment and to have a significant amount of long-term ownership. It'd be fair to say that until relatively recently I was not that optimistic that there would be a high level of local investment through the Tuki Investment Limited Partnership. People are talking it up big in Central Hawke's Bay, and they keep saying they'd like to have some more of it. If they've got some money, we'd like to have it. There is a balance of risk and return to be had in this project. We, as the business case sets out, have subordinated ourselves in terms of cash flow to practically everybody else. The cash flow waterfall is there for you to see in the business case. So we do not get rewarded fabulously well for our investment in the early stages of this project. We get rewarded as well as everybody else later on. I could mount a very good argument as to why, once the project is ahead, going, that HBRIC should retain whatever level of investment that it has. But we have a clear guideline from you that no more than $80 million can be invested, and that's why the number is capped at $80 million.
I was interested more in the slide, but I have a second question. And the key to this report to me is that there will be discussions between HBRIC and Council around the shortfall of investment funds. in the next few years, and I think that's a key discussion. So I'm interested, possibly from our chairman or either chairman, when's that discussion going to be taking place? Because they're pretty key assumptions to this.